Alrighty, so there are, we need to make sure that every vote is fair. That's the main thing about democracies is we want it to be fair. But unfortunately, it's not always fair and we don't even realize it. But there are 4 fairness criterion that we're going to cover today, okay? And the first one is called the Majority Criterion. And this criterion, it says that if there is a candidate or alternative that has a majority of first place votes, then that candidate or alternative should be the winner. Okay? Now, notice that they're using the word alternative. That's when you're voting for something that is not a person. So say you're voting for the top flavor of ice cream. That would be an alternative. Okay? So that's what they're meaning by that. So it's either for a person or a thing that you're voting for. Okay? Also, on the next one, oh, and by the way, the majority criterion makes perfect sense in the sense that most of the things that we've voted for from preschool up, we've been using majority vote, right? So majority criterion. But there are 3 other criterions that are maybe not as familiar to you in terms of fairness. The second one would be head-to-head criterion. And if a candidate is favored when compared head-to-head with every other candidate, then if they're favored with each person, each other person they're up against, then they should be the winner. That's what this is saying. Okay? All right. So that's the head-to-head criterion. And then the monotonicity. I cannot say that word. It's very hard for me. Monotonicity. Okay? If a candidate or alternative X is a winner of an election, and in a re-election, all the voters who change their preferences do so in a way that's only favorable to X, then X should still be the winner of the election. In other words, with this particular one, think about a straw poll before an election. Okay? What's the purpose of a straw poll? I didn't hear you.
Talking about like shortest straw has to like.
Oh. Well, that's a different type of poll. I'm thinking about what's called a straw poll before an election. It's kind of like going through and checking to see who, predict who's going to win, right? So in that particular one, if, like, say, a month before the election, they say that Abraham Lincoln is going to win the election, okay, then it should follow that as long as he's only gaining people along the way in that last month, that he should win the election. Correct? And that's what the monotonicity criterion is saying. Okay, so the last criterion is called the independent of irrelevant alternatives criterion. So if a candidate or an item is a winner of the election and one or more other candidates or items are removed from and the ballots are recounted, then that candidate should still be the winner. So what we're trying to say here is that, say you have 5 different flavors of ice cream, okay? And you're trying to vote the winner of ice cream, and say, with all 5 candidates in there, chocolate wins, okay? And then towards the end right before the vote, say we decided that we cannot get enough strawberry, so we got to pull strawberry as a flavor out. So now we only have 4 flavors to pick from. Okay, pulling strawberry out means that those people that voted strawberry are going to go to the other 4 items, right? Okay, so what this is saying is that even though they go to the 4 other possibilities, chocolate should still win.
Because so many people voted for one?
Yeah. Yep. Okay? So that's what this is saying, is that even if an alternative drops out of the vote, and this could happen in regular elections for people. Say a candidate has a heart attack or a car accident. That happens. I know it's morbid, but that can happen. Then that person either falls out of the election or somebody takes their place. So what happens to the rest of those votes, those people that were supporting that person? Where do they go? Are they going to follow the leader? Or are they going to follow the other ones and tip the scale where the people that are falling behind actually win? Okay, so that's what this criterion is talking about. All right. So moving on to the next page of your notes.
Wait, can you go back over monotony?
So the next thing I want to do is look at the 4 voting methods that we've looked at in the last couple days and see how they fall on the 4 fairness criterion. Okay, so that we can get an idea if they are fair or not. And so looking at plurality method. Remember, plurality method is taking the first choice votes and seeing who has the most first choice votes. So by a result of that, it obviously always satisfies the majority criterion. Okay, so head-to-head criterion, plurality method may not always follow. It doesn't mean it won't follow it, but there might be instances where it doesn't follow it. Okay? The monotonicity, it always satisfies that one. So for like if you take a straw poll, as long as they're gaining votes, they should win. Okay? Irrelevant alternatives, it may not satisfy that one. So if somebody drops out, it might mess up who you think should win in the plurality method. Okay? So board account method, majority doesn't always win in this one, so it may not follow that. For head-to-head criterion, it may not follow that one either. Monotonicity, it always satisfies that one. But it may not satisfy a dropout. Okay? For plurality with elimination, like I just said earlier, whenever you eliminate until you get to the majority, this one will obviously always satisfy the majority criterion. Okay? But it may not satisfy the other 3. Which one do you think would the pairwise comparison would satisfy every time? It's going to always satisfy the head-to-head because it's very similar to it. Okay? Pairwise comparison, you're comparing pairs of the candidates, right? That's the same as the head-to-head. Mm-hmm. So, and actually, it always satisfies majority, and it always satisfies the monotonicity. But it may not satisfy the irrelevant alternatives. Okay? So as you're doing your homework for today and you're comparing these things, you're going to see when it does and when it doesn't satisfy. Right? Interesting that this one has 3 out of 4 criterion as always. Yet, how often do you see pairwise comparison in an election? Not very often, right? Except when we're electing food, it seems to be a pairwise comparison sometimes. But okay. So, arrows and possibility theorem. So what he is saying is, and if you were to read that little section, this is just the summary, is it says, it is mathematically impossible for any democratic voting system to satisfy each of the 4 fairness criteria. Yeah, then if it's not democratic, it's a different story. I mean, you're not really voting, really, then, right? On this one, we want to compare the board account to the majority criterion, okay? If we're looking at completely just at majority on this particular table, we'd be looking at E. How many votes does E get on that first choice? 6, okay? How about G? 3, and F gets 2. H doesn't get anything. Okay, so who should have gotten majority vote in this one? E. Now the other thing is we can look at, in terms of if we're thinking about 50% majority on this, we look at the total. If we add all that up, that's 11. So 6 out of 11, that's greater than 50%. That's G. to G, but there you go. Okay.
Close enough.
Okay. All right, so based on this, E wins, right? Okay, now let's look at the border count method. Okay, so I'm going to do this a little bit slightly different than I did the other day because sometimes seeing it a different way might make it easier. So I'm just going to show you a different way that I did. Okay, so notice that if we're looking at border count, we have to give a weight amount to each choice. We start on the fourth choice, so we're going to give it 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So I want to look and see how much this E value gets. It had 6 votes for 4 points each. So 6 times 4 is 24. The next one would be 6 times 3. That'd be 18. So G gets 6 votes at 2 points each. So that'd be 12. And H gets 6 votes at 1 point each. That'd be 6. Okay, so we could do the same thing for the next column. G gets 3 votes at 4 points each. How much would that be? 12. Okay. H is be 3 times 3. That'll be 9. 3 times 2 is 6. And then 3 times 1 is 1. Oh, 3. Pardon me. Then the last column. F gets 2 votes at 4 points each. So that'll be 8. 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, so what we need to do is figure out how many total points did E get. So I'm going to look at all of them. We got 24 on the first column. The second column, E got 3 points plus 2 points. So yes, it adds up to be 29 points. Okay? On the next one, I can look at F. On the first column, F got 18. It got 6 in the second column, and then 8 on the second. Yes, and that ends up being 32. Okay, now let's look at G. Okay, so, yep, 12 plus 12 plus 6 is 30. And then last but not least, or maybe it is least, 6 plus 9 plus 4, which ends up being 19, and it does happen to be least in this case. So who wins? F. Now is that majority? Because what did F get from majority up here?
It's a majority.
2. But so if you're looking at majority first place votes, F got last place. So based on the majority criterion, board account didn't pass that ruling. 12 plus 12 plus 6. All right. So next, I want to look at plurality versus head-to-head criterion. Okay? So let's first, I need to teach you guys how to do the head-to-head criterion. It's a lot like pairwise like we did yesterday, except it's slightly different in the fact that we are actually using the number of votes up here. Okay? So there's only 3 choices, so we're going to have A versus B. We're going to have A versus C, and then B versus C. Okay? So in the first column, who wins, A or B? A wins, and A is going to get 8 points. On the second column, who wins? B wins. B gets 6 points. Third column, who wins? A. And the last one, B gets 4. So 8 plus 4 is 12. 6 plus 4 is 10. Who wins overall? A wins overall in that one. So now let's look at A and C. A beats C, so it gets 8 points. On the second column, C beats A, 6 points. And then the third column, C wins 4. Last column, A wins 4. Once again, A wins. So in a sense, because A's already won twice out of 3, we don't really need to go further. But just for practice, let's do B versus C. Okay, so B wins the first column, 8 points. C wins the second column, 6 points. B loses the third column, so C gets that. And then fourth column, B gets. And notice that they just all happen to have the same point value. That was just lucky. Okay? So A wins in this case by looking at head-to-head. A should have won the overall election. For one thing, we already know that A beats B, B beats C, so therefore A should beat C also, if you use the transitive property. Okay? Now, let's look at part B. It says, which brand is favored using the plurality method? Well, if I look at that, A gets how many points on the first choice? 8. C gets how many points? 6 and 4. So that should be 10, right? And B gets only 4 points. So who wins on the plurality method? C. Okay? So notice that C, the plurality method does not follow the head-to-head criterion here. It didn't work.
So, in an act of letting